Hello and welcome to Movie Night. And I can say for once that it hasn't been a while since our last video. It was just the other day. So we've got a triple bill for you today, and I'm joined as ever by Ed. How are you doing today?
Hello, I'm good. I'm ready to talk about some films, some slightly spooky but not really films
Yeah,
in the
yes,
mood of Halloween.
definitely. Yeah. I think they've got a good theme for that. So the first film we watched is a Netflix original that's been out this year. Was released, I think, only a couple of weeks ago or something. It's not been out that long at all.
Mm.
It's called The Devil All the Time. It's directed by Antonio Campos, or how we say it, and it stars Tom Holland, Robert Pattinson, quite a few other people actually, and it's
Yeah.
kind of set somewhere in South America, and it kind of tells the story of one person's life, but kind of also a number of other characters as well that kind of intertwine
Mm.
among others. So I guess I'll just start by asking you, Ed, now, because you actually recommended this film to me, or you said you'd watched it. So what made you want to watch this one?
I don't know really. It sounded like it was one of those things where from the Netflix description, I couldn't really tell what the film was going to be about. So because it said something quite vague, just like about how it was. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was one of those things that intrigued me because it was like, oh, how are they going to make a film around this premise? And I actually quite enjoyed the way it was. At first, it kind of put me off a bit, but the way it was structured, I quite liked. It
Yeah,
reminded me a bit of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where there is sort of a main character, but really the whole thing focuses on, I guess the central element is like the town or
mm.
just this web of people that are connected quite loosely, but then end up coming together. It's quite a satisfying way to structure a film, I think, in a non-traditional way.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I think that's
I
one of the
should
things
say,
it gets right.
yeah, I should say as well. It's based on a novel. I
Mm.
think I read somewhere, and the guy who wrote the novel is actually the person who provides the voiceover as well.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And yeah, I just read that somewhere when I was looking on the IMDb page. Uh,
Mm.
but yeah, when you did recommend it to me, but I had also seen it somewhere. I wasn't really aware of the work of this director, but it was more the kind of description of the
Mm.
plot, and obviously some well-known people in it. So
Yeah, it's a very all-star cast. Do you think that there's definitely a risk with that it sort of detracts away from it, especially when you put people in roles that they're not really used to? Do you think that was the case here?
no, I think that all the performers were pretty good, and they were pretty good for the fact that actually a large amount of the cast weren't even American. Like people
Yeah.
Robert Pattinson and Tom Holland and a few of the others are actually like either English or in any other nationality. So and
Mhm.
their accents were all convincing, and they all were good in the roles. I thought. Um,
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like when I saw Tom Holland in it,
mm,
and bear in mind he doesn't turn up. Well, his character is in it, but his
yeah,
grown-up version that he plays
mm,
doesn't turn up for quite a while.
mm,
So, and before that point, the film had gone for a tone like that was very sort of not. I wouldn't say dark. It almost feels more like a slasher flick. Do you ever get that vibe? Because there
yeah,
was like
yeah,
so
I
many
know what
people
you mean.
dying.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was worried that uh, he wouldn't really be able to like carry that, but I think he did it actually. He stole the show in a way.
yeah.
Like he did really
Yeah,
well in that role.
he was really good. Yeah, yes, I enjoyed the sense of scope that you kind of got from the fact that it went from when he was younger, and I felt
Mm.
that by the very end of the film, like not I don't want to give it away or anything, but like that like his character had a satisfying development, like all the way through. It was good.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
good to see that all the way through, definitely.
yeah. It almost feels like Tarantino, like it's sort of a revenge story, I suppose, but it's a bit more than that. I like
Mm,
how, yeah, not spoiling it. If you were going to have like a central theme, I guess it's like the cycle of violence, which
mm,
is why it follows the group from generation to generation.
yeah,
Like how he treats people just exactly the way his dad used
yeah,
to. Yeah, it's a very like interesting, pretty uh, competent, I guess I would call it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 I enjoyed. There were lots of individual elements I enjoyed, sort of, and like scenes,
Mm.
that I can point to as
Yeah.
well. I don't think like as an entire whole, it was like a masterpiece or anything.
No.
Like there were a couple of things, like, and actually the main thing, I would have taken out is actually the voiceover narration. I
Yeah.
kind of felt like that at times was a bit just. It almost took you out of it a bit. There was one particular bit where it was sort of describing how uh, it was a particular bit with the sort of the couple who were taking pictures of stuff like
Yeah.
all this. There was a bit there's a bit to do with them where it was sort of talking about quite near the end of the film and sort of the climax moment of the film, and it just feels like it's interrupting a bit all the time, kind of disrupting the flow. It would almost work better with.
Yeah.
Uh,
I also feel like well, there's two things. I'm sure I've mentioned it before on this on movie night, but I think films that are based on books often fall into this trap
yeah.
where, because in the book so much story is given through like this ethereal third person,
Mm,
that's like telling stuff that when you make a film, people feel the need to have a narrator.
yeah, yeah,
uh, and I think that's obviously it's very hard because a lot of the time, well, obviously when you're reading a book, it'll say, "Oh, I thought this," but you don't get that in a film unless you literally say it. Obviously, if you're really good at making films, you can do it in a way that you can convey that without narration.
yeah, yeah,
But but I also think it was done quite cheaply here. And the example I bring, this isn't really a spoiler, but is as a sort of tenuous way of linking the couple that you're talking about, specifically the guy. It
mm,
was sort of a tenuous way of linking him to the whole religious theme. It was like, oh, he does all this stuff because this is the
yes,
closest he feels
yeah,
to
yeah.
God or something.
Yes, I know
And
exactly
it
what
was
you.
just like, it
Yeah,
was a really small line and it feels like a nitpick, but it's just like, it just feels like, okay, you're
well, there's
just
yeah.
saying that
It's,
though.
and that's the kind of stuff. The whole point of making a film out of it, as opposed to reading the book, is because you can see it. I can see what's happening, and I can infer that for myself without like
Yeah,
without them say without it just being said out loud.
yeah, yeah. I think it's fair to say it doesn't take full advantage of like the cinematic medium. I mean, no particular shots or cinematography or anything like that stand out. The scenery looks nice, but like other than that, but yeah, like I think like a solid 3 out of 5 stars for me.
Yeah,
I would recommend.
I said exactly the same. In that I think that there was a lot to enjoy, like character wise, and a lot came from the performances as well. Like I really liked Robert Pattinson's
Yeah, that's true.
character just because of how sort of slimy he was. Like it's just
Oh
so
god,
horrible. Yeah, yeah.
the very subtle thing is that I noticed the costume design, like his
Mm,
little frilly shirt, like it made him look more like a performer or like one of those like a musical artist almost. It
yeah,
looked
yeah,
like not a priest at all. It was
yeah,
really like
yeah, yeah,
really good there.
yeah,
But yeah, I agree. I think that's the one advantage it has of being a film is the performances.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Seeing Spider-Man cave someone's head in with a lead pipe. That's quite
Yeah,
good.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Well, I hope that no one watched this who's like a fan of Spider-Man or something, or like, or a fan of Twilight or something. Oh, great! I'll watch this. I love Tom Holland. Oh no.
I actually quite like the idea that someone would go into it like
Yeah,
thinking that, but then be proved wrong.
yeah, yeah. Well, as long as they're not a 12-year-old girl or something, then
Yeah, that's true.
size. But yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, and I think it's good to see like Tom Holland branching out and doing stuff like that. I, hope he does.
Yeah, yeah.
Not that I enjoy Spider-Man as well, but obviously, like it's a different kind of thing. So
No, it's easy. It's a completely different character. Yeah.
it's good to do that. Yeah, sure. So if we're is that was there anything else to add on that one, or should we move on?
Nah, should we move on to Zodiac?
Yeah. So as you say, the second film we saw was Zodiac. Now Zodiac is also based on a book. In fact, I think all three of the films we're going to talk.
Yeah, that's like that's a theme, I guess, if you
Yeah,
wanted to have one
yeah,
for this video.
yeah. Although this book is obviously like a non-fiction account of what happened. So the film is basically it's directed by David Fincher of Gone Girl and Seven and Fight Club and all these kind of films fame.
Mm.
Alien 3, classic. And so it tells a story basically of the Zodiac killer, who's a serial killer in San Francisco and the surrounding area. It tells a story of basically how a group of journalists and police and all these kind of people tried to track him down basically and find out how to do it, and find out how to catch him. And it's not a new film, although it was on. We both watched it on Netflix because it's on there at the moment. I think it's about uh, 10,
It was
15,
2007.
2007. Yep. So we just thought we'd watch it and talk about it. So what were your thoughts on it then, Ed?
Well, I actually quite liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I'm going to counter what you just said, actually.
Mm,
Say, I actually don't think this film is necessarily about the Zodiac killer. I
right.
think it's more about the uh, obsession surrounding it, like of finding who he was and the effect it had on people.
Yes, absolutely.
Um, Certainly, the main, like Jake Gyllenhaal, takes a big toll on him. Uh, and there's a very the most poignant part that I can remember is near the end. This might be a little bit of a spoiler, but not massively. Basically, he has the opportunity to this creepy guy who may or may not be the Zodiac killer uh, to his character, like he doesn't know, uh, invites him very suspiciously into his basement.
Yes,
Uh,
that scene is absolutely brilliant. Yeah, yeah,
it's so good, and it's like he doesn't force him or anything, but he's clearly like a very creepy atmosphere. But because he's like, and he has ample opportunity to like escape, but he's so obsessed that he just goes down anyway and like
yeah,
keeps
yeah.
delving in. I guess it's kind of a metaphor for like,
Well, there's so many
yeah,
great like setups and payoffs in that scene as well, because it's like
yeah,
one of the whole things is about like they would need to put the bodies in the basement. Not many houses in that area have basements and all this.
yeah.
There's just like, it is a great suspense filled scene.
Mm,
Um, and I think that's one of the best scenes like that. And I think it's a testament to another film with really good performances like Jake Gyllenhaal Robert Downey Jr. and Mark Ruffalo are all very strong. They're like the kind of the three most well known people in it, I guess, and they're all like really good in their
yeah.
performances. All in a kind of, and they all kind of like relate that like obsession of finding it almost in a three different ways, almost like
Mm,
the fact that like Robert Downey Jr. kind of gives up a bit, sort of turns to alcohol and stuff instead.
mm.
Like,
Well, he like wants to find him, but he's not willing to like put the work in, and
yeah, exactly.
he's more interested in making it into like a story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that whole angle of it. I will say I don't know if it necessarily needed to be 2.5 hours. Not that
That,
that's like a huge length for a film, but just like uh, I don't know. It felt like there was a lot of uh, fluff, I guess. Not a huge noticeable amount, but like just some stuff that wasn't entirely necessary, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
I would agree. I don't necessarily know if it needs to be, quite that long. And I don't think I enjoy it as much as some of like David Fincher's other films.
yeah, I agree.
On the list, like I don't enjoy it as much as Gone Girl or a few others. Which
Yeah. That said,
they still,
uh, unlike my complaint with the previous film, there was a lot of great cinematography,
yeah,
really good, memorable shots. It was something really subtle, but I just love the tracking shot of the taxi, where like overhead and it's like perfectly tracked the taxi. I don't even know how he did that. Um,
yeah. Well, that's
that stuff like that is cool.
he's why he's such a talented guy is that he's able to elevate sort of scripts or books like this and add in just really cool bits like that. There's an
Mm,
interesting shot of just like of a that's trying to show, because there's a lot of sort of movements in time, like a lot of movements in
mm.
time, and to show one movement he sort of shows like a building being built, like, or like
Yeah,
progress of the building, which is just an interesting way of showing the time going rather than just like the traditional.
yeah, because time moves forward quite a lot, so
Yeah,
it's good to have those stuff.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's another very it's definitely one of those films that gets better as it goes along.
Yes,
I remember having to force myself a little bit to watch it at the beginning parts because I wasn't really sure where it was going. But
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it in two halves, and I enjoyed the second half more. But I would probably recommend potentially watching it in two halves actually, because you don't get the fatigue in the middle almost because you have that break. But I mean, obviously, if you get the chance to, you get the time to watch it all once, do. But like, also, I wouldn't feel bad about watching them in two halves.
Yeah, I think maybe it's not a fair thing to say because I think it's just like it needs to take time to like build up. I guess the second half is where real it all sort of kicks off and like they start to get really or Jake Gyllenhaal or Jake I can never say that guy's name.
Yeah,
Jake Gyllenhaal's character starts to get really like obsessed into the whole thing,
yeah,
and that's when it's like starts moving a lot quicker.
yeah.
So that's when it becomes a lot more engaging to watch. Yeah, again, would recommend it. A very solid, very good film.
Yeah, same. I'd recommend giving it a watch while it's on Netflix if you can get a hold of it. Should we move on to our final film that we were going to discuss, the third film, which is
Yes, you can do.
also a Netflix original that was released this year, which again has been out for a couple of weeks, a month at most, and it's called "I'm Thinking of Ending Things," and it's written and directed by Charlie Kaufman, who previously wrote "Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind" and Synecdoche, New York, and Anomalisa, and a few other films like that. And this one is also based on a novel. I think it's a very short novel, and it's quite hard to describe exactly what the plot is, but it's about a girlfriend and a boyfriend driving to visit the boyfriend's parents' house. That is what I can leave that as the basic introduction.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure I'm not sure what your opinion on this is. So I'll let you say
I'm
your.
curious to hear you. Nah, I want to hear yours
Okay,
first.
so yeah. Well, my feeling was is there was bits of it I really liked. I really liked the bit when they went to the house itself, when they're with the parents in the house, how it sort of keeps you're really unsure as to what's happening, at times, or like, because it kind of, the whole film kind of has this like loose grip on reality where you're not exactly sure what's real and what's not. And I really like that because there's how the parents are like seeming really old at times and then younger at times. And that's the parents are played by Tony Collette and David Thewlis, who are really good actors.
They're great, yeah.
I really loved that bit of the film, and that was my absolute favorite bit. But really, pretty much after that is where it really fell off the rails for me, because it just got really interminably long with just conversations. Because basically after that, they're basically just in the car again, talking to each other, and I felt like the film just was a bit self-indulgent almost with that stuff, like the dialogue. I mean, it's not that like I don't just enjoy listening to, I'm happy to have dialogue if the dialogue's interesting, but I just wasn't that engaged by it really. And I felt like the most engaging part of the film was like at the hour mark, and then it's like a 2 hour 15-minute film, so there's still like another like I felt like it was just a bit too long, but not like not terrible, but again unnecessarily long is what my feeling was. What was your feeling?
No, that's really interesting. I think we should, if you will agree, I think we should break our no spoiler rule because there's a lot to talk about.
If you want to watch it anyway, watch it yourself. But yes,
yeah, stop the review here and watch it.
We'll go into spoilers from now on.
I mean, yeah, it's like obviously Albert said his thoughts. I disagree. I think it's worth watching all the way through. So if you want to watch it, watch it.
Yeah.
So here we go. You've had your warning. Yeah, I agree. For the most part, obviously, it's worth noting that like it's hard to describe. Like originally, when I was going into this film, certainly like the way it starts, it seems like a horror film, or at least some sort of psychological horror, which you could argue it definitely is. And I felt that way up until the part you're talking about when they got to the house.
Yeah,
there's lots of clues and foreshadowing that something isn't right in a very horror film-esque way. I remember the standout part was like the mum waving out the window, and she's like doing it really frantically. And
Yeah,
it's like
that's
it almost feels like,
really liked. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The
it was
second,
almost like she was waving for help.
yeah, yeah,
And obviously like the stuff with the pig being eaten by maggots, like and just lots. I love uh this style of horror where it's no there's no creep. It's not even creepy, I would say. I think it's just like uncanny, like
mm,
like small details that you know that when you notice just become like just create this really uneasy atmosphere.
yeah,
Like why the flip is the barn door wide open in the blizzard?
yeah,
uh, at one point, like doors just kind of swing open, and then in the next shot they're closed, and it's like, all this stuff adds up to a really like weird atmosphere when the parents don't come down the stairs for like 20 minutes. You
yeah, yeah.
know, uh, my particular favorite was when he was talking about the pig being eaten by maggots. And then she says like all the food's fresh from the farm, and then it's like a big hog roast. And I was
Yes,
like,
yeah,
oh no.
yeah.
um but then I think the turning point for me, which for me was a positive, whereas for you it was a negative, was when they left. Because all the stuff in the house was really cool. Um, and I'm not saying necessarily the film gets better or anything after this point, but it's like, it's again, like you, I was a bit taken aback. I was like, wait, there's still an hour left and they're leaving like the haunted house. you
Yeah,
know, the whole premise of the film was based on this. Um, but then I got to sort of realize what the film was really about. I guess you could say it's like um, their whole relationship, and just relationships in general. I think that's what the film was really going for, and it's a very specific kind of relationship. Like the whole, basically, they just got together, and like she says multiple times, it's just easier to say yes sometimes, and she kind of just sticks with him because it's easier,
yeah.
but she still wants to like, you know, uh, she still wants to end things. And then on the flip side, I don't think Luke's his name, right? Is it
Uh,
Luke? I think so.
is it Jake or
Oh no,
Luke?
Jake.
Yeah, I was just
Yeah, I
thinking.
think on the flip
Yeah,
side,
I knew it was.
in a
Yeah,
way, sorry, go on.
yeah. No. I was saying yes to that. That was his name. I was just trying to remember.
On the flip side, I feel like Jake almost feels the same way. Uh, that not in the sense that he wants things to end, but in just that it's sort of a relationship of ease, and really what he wants, which is made clear in a few things he says, is like he just wants someone to acknowledge him, basically. I mean, his mum says it multiple times. It's clear that he's had like a lonely childhood, all this stuff, and like all this stuff he does, he wants someone to notice him and accommodate him. He doesn't necessarily like her, but he just needs some. He wants somebody there to like affirm him.
Hmm.
And uh, but I agree. Maybe certainly the car ride was very long. I'm not going to deny that for a second. But I really was engaged the whole time. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just because like it was such an unusual. Or I should rephrase that. It was such like a realistic portrayal of like an uncomfortable relationship that it was like so engrossing to watch. And like I don't know, it was so realistic the way that they just clearly didn't understand each other at all. They were not on the same wavelength. It's a really like novel portrayal of relationships in a film for me. Um, uh, but yeah, sorry, I've been talking too long about that.
Well,
So, what did you think?
I was going to ask what you thought about the whole, because I read one kind of interpretation of the film being that the old like caretaker guy who's working in the school, who we sort of keep cutting back to, that's almost meant to be the old version of Jake,
Oh,
and that
yeah,
he's kind
definitely.
of he's I. But what's the like? I guess it's up to your interpretation as to whether this is all happened, whether this the girl has died later or something, or whether the girl never existed in the first place and he's just a lonely old guy imagining what could it
Yeah.
be kind of thing.
I
Uh,
guess it could be any number of things.
yeah, it's
But
quite
for
nice.
me, I just kind of gave up at a certain point, trying to figure out whether she would. I mean, she kept. It's pretty obvious. Like they keep changing her name.
Yeah,
They keep changing what she does, how they met. Like
yeah,
I think if you wanted to get really like wishy-washy about it, it's almost like she's an idea rather than an actual person. Like
yeah.
maybe he's
And I think,
invented her or
well,
something.
I think that that's the fact that he's remembering it in old age. It's kind of like it's probably just a mix of people, hence the different names. You know, it's different girls that he met over
Mm,
his whole life, for whom the relationship didn't work out, and hence he's left, by himself. Just,
yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, and like, but I think it's almost with films like this, it's almost like it's very tempting, and I was doing it to begin with, but I almost think it's like a bit silly to like try too hard to pin down the details like that.
Yeah.
Whether she was real or not, it's like it's kind of a, not really the question that's being asked. Like, um, but I do like that they presented it like that because it's adds to that sort of uneasy atmosphere. Uh, Rather than being like a horror, it almost feels like an, an episode of Peep Show or something.
Yeah.
Like when they're having dinner, that
Yeah, that cringe-worthy stuff. Yeah. So one thing I thought is when is about the length of the film, and that I think I would have enjoyed the film a lot more if it was like 90 minutes long or something, because obviously it's based on a shorter book. And I think if you cut out a lot of this conversation stuff in the second half, and a lot of stuff that I felt was a bit indulgent, like the dance scene at the end, like by that point I
mm,
was just really checked out, and I was just like, can this just be over yet? Like not that I don't enjoy, like, you know, I don't want to seem like, oh, there was no shooting or something, therefore it was boring. But I mean, like, I just felt like and it sort of it was an interesting thing for me of like the fact that it's a Netflix original. It's not a cinema, so the creator doesn't kind of have to think about runtime in the same way. There was a similar
yeah,
thing with Martin Scorsese's The Irishman last year, about like twice
mm,
how long it was, and I enjoyed that film a lot. But it doesn't need to be 3.5 hours long, and I think that's
mm,
probably the way it's made. Really, the fact that like Netflix basically said to Charlie Kaufman, they were like, you can make it as long as you like because it's on Netflix anyway. And I feel like
mm,
if he'd have had that constraint of a bit, make the film a bit shorter, like I think it probably would have been more enjoyable for me anyway. Because there was
mm,
lots I still liked about it, and there was a lot of stuff about like working out, what and all. But basically, there are good memorable bits, but there's also a lot that just like could have been cut out quite easily, and probably should have been, in my opinion. But still a lot to get out of it.
yeah. I actually agree about the dancing thing. I feel like it would have been cool had it not been for that scene in the middle, which by the way was also really jarring and funny. Like uh, where they seem to cut to a different film.
Yes, yeah,
Because that was obviously like supposed to mirror that to some extent. They're like this is like their ideal relationship.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but even it's I don't know that I think that part was really cool because it was like clearly if that was in reality she would have been pissed off with him and like binned him off, but because it was like a film they got together, which is I guess how Jake saw things. Like
Yeah,
they
yes.
got together
Because
because
yeah, because it's the older guy watching it as well. You get that kind of sense of like
yeah,
watching it being angry or something, or being like disappointed that things aren't like that. Almost like
yeah, like this is how it should have gone.
yeah, yeah,
And but I think by the dance was just sort of like a reiteration of that point, and it wasn't really necessary. Uh, Not to mention, I feel like it was again. I don't want to say, like you say, I don't want to sound like ooh, it's all. I can deal with abstract stuff. Don't get me
yeah,
wrong, but
absolutely, yeah,
I liked the like I was saying the things I was praising about it was the subtle things that made me feel uneasy. Uh, you know, because at the end of the day, everything felt grounded to an extent. And so when stuff broke the rules, it felt weird. But by that point, like all rules had kind of just flown out the window. So, and I guess it makes sense because it was like the end of the film, it was the climax. But to a certain extent, I wish they'd kind of stuck to that atmosphere because it was very successful in the beginning parts.
Yeah.
I mean, once he stripped naked and started following like a cartoon pig, it was like
Yeah.
they just thrown everything out at that point. Not that it wasn't entertaining, but it was just a bit more like, I don't know. By that point, I was like, not. I didn't feel uneasy anymore. I was just like,
Yeah.
okay,
That
I'm
was,
just taking
that
it
was,
in now.
I think that was where I just felt like I checked out at that point. Like I guess
Yeah.
it just depends what kind of like we kind of think. So I was watching it then in the evening, so it was probably got later on in the night, and I was like, right, come on now, like
Well, that's the thing.
yeah.
I was watching it like at late at night too, and then that's why the stuff at the beginning probably worked so well because it was like put me in such a weird mood. But then the stuff at the end, I was almost like, all right, like
Yeah.
I get
And
what you're trying to say,
well, that is
but
and I think that stuff at the end ended up like outweighing the positive stuff for me. Like just like based on like the initial feeling afterwards. Like if I'd stopped watching at an hour mark or something and then watched the second half the next day, I probably would have felt better about it. But like just because I was quite so checked out of the other stuff, just when she's just talking about some film or something, like I'm just in this just I can't even
yeah.
just these long conversations that just like aren't they don't seem to be serving any purpose because they're not really like they weren't really adding that much to depth to the characters, or not that I felt like that much anyway, but like
I guess it was just to show. Well, it seemed like they were making her like older because she like just started smoking randomly and she talked like a
yeah
lot differently, and it was almost like a different person. Or
yeah
on some level, I guess they were trying to. It was like for me, my first impression was they'd been married for a long time in this hypothetical, scenario, and like
yeah
she was nagging him and talking his ear off, and he was like getting annoyed.
yeah
Uh, and it also goes to show again that they like just weren't on the same page at all because like she was like really critical of the film and he was like, no, it's all romantic and nice. But uh, I agree. I think uh, as much as I like that whole car sequence, I don't remember a lot of the smallest details about it. So I
yeah
suppose that's quite telling.
yeah
Maybe they could have cut it a bit shorter and then I would have remembered a bit more about it.
mm. Yeah well again I think the whole film would have worked, and I would have got the same amount of stuff in terms of the interpretations and like ideas that were from it, because obviously I won't. There's a lot of interesting stuff in it, and obviously Charlie Kaufman is obviously a talented writer and has written
Mm,
good stuff before that it deals with these kind of subjects. So
mm.
yeah,
Eternal Sunshine is very good. Side note, that's
yeah,
probably one of my favorite of his.
yeah. I haven't actually seen it yet.
Uh,
It's been on my list for a while, but I haven't just had access. I don't think I've had access to watching it before. So
very
I'd still want
creepy.
to check it out though, because there was a lot of the stuff I liked, like of the writing would work well in other
Yeah,
situations for sure. Yeah, and
he
I know.
nails a very specific. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, I was only going to say that I know that he has lots of fans in the same way of like someone like Tarantino, where like
Mm,
they have these like fans who will go see it regardless. They see his name, they'll go see it.
mm.
Um,
It's because it's like such a specific thing he does really well. It's like it's this very existential. It's like very existential sort of feeling of like dread and just this weird feeling that something's not quite right, like uncanny, I guess would be the word.
yes,
Uh, it nails it better than any film I've seen. I think
yeah,
it's a very unique story, like a way of telling a story. But I guess that would be the one upside of Eternal Sunshine compared to this was felt like that had a stronger story it
yeah,
wanted to tell, and there
yeah,
were a lot more. And this could be not a positive I view things, but I got the sense that uh, with the case of Eternal Sunshine, Charlie Kaufman had a very strong idea of what was actually happening in his head, and it was up to you to interpret it. Whereas I feel like towards the end of this, he sort of thought maybe he did have a strong idea of what was actually going on, but to me it just felt like he was kind of splashing stuff at a wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
You know, like it could be multiple things.
And as well with Eternal Sunshine, he wasn't the director; he was only the writer. And Michel Gondry was the director. And I think that often having another person involved is better, you know. And it works the other way as well. In fairness, with that there are directors with really strong senses of style, but they need that substance behind them. Great example of that is Nick Winding Refn, the guy who made Drive.
Oh yeah.
You've seen it. I'm not saying whether you've seen Drive or not, but Drive is really good because it has a really strong like scripts and story, and also a really great sense of style that he provides. But then a lot of his other films are basically like all style with not much substance.
I think that's
somewhat of a side note to this, but basically, perhaps if he'd have had like another director potentially like to trim the story and keep it tight, it might have worked better. But you know, I don't know.
Yeah. Like you say, it's a very risky thing because it can go either way. I feel like as long as they have a good relationship and like they're on the same page, about stuff like the director and writer, I will say you get more interesting, more diverse stuff. It's just the one guy, even if it's not as good.
Yes,
I would argue that they have a stronger sense of vision when it's just one guy. But sorry, that's going off topic, isn't it?
But yes.
But maybe I agree though. Maybe it would have been better to have somebody there.
It's obviously whenever we can only judge the film that already exists. So, but I'd say overall do give it a watch because I think it is like it is unique as the word we've discussed. Like even if I didn't enjoy it as much, it is certainly worth watching. I would recommend it from that perspective for sure.
Yeah, it's probably like a 50-50, honestly, whether you'll resonate with it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
As shown by this, I mean, you know, one person didn't like so much, one person did. Like, I think it's honestly, I guess if you could relate to it as well, that would help. You know, if you've been in like a relationship like that, or you have that kind of weird relationship with your parents. Saying whether either of us can relate to that, but you know, I think that certainly would add to the existential benefit. But yeah, obviously I would recommend it. I really liked it, even if it fell a little bit off towards the end. It was very much worth watching. I love anything like this that tries to do something very different. And also, go on.
No, I was only gonna say again. I do as well. It was only the second half really. There was I
also like anything that tries to tackle new in film. Like it was, like I say, it was tackling a very specific kind of relationship. It's the way I think about it is this was the first time for a long time when I was watching a film where it seemed like the director wanted you to want the couple to not be together at the end rather than the other way around. You know what I mean? Like it was very interesting. It's it's like I think the better films get at displaying romance and like actual realistic relationships, the better. Like you can create some very interesting stories rather than just the typical, you know, follow the girl and fall in love and all that stuff. Like but yeah, obviously check it out.
Yes, on Netflix, as are all the films that we have talked about today. So I think that about wraps it up, unless you have anything else to add.
Nope, I don't suppose you do.
No, I think we've covered those three films pretty good. I mean, I think other than just checking out our Letterboxd, I'll put them again in the description. You can see our, all kinds of ratings for stuff on there, and check out our other videos. Otherwise, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Happy Halloween.
Yeah.